just connected to me in a way that felt more real, which actually intensified the horror because it was closer to me, something I could relate to.
You just heard from this week's guest. I'm Christian Gossett.
I'm Chris Simon.
And I'm David Hyde.
Welcome to the Superfan Podcast, where the people who make the comics you love talk about the things they love that aren't comics. Thank you as ever to Low and the Shag for our theme song. This week's episode is brought to you by Fanbase Press and Superfan Promotions.
You are listening to the pilot episode of the Superfan Podcast, and we are truly delighted for you to be joining us here. We have been working on this behind the scenes for quite some time, longer than anybody might think. But we wanted to be really thoughtful with our approach. And mostly we wanted to find a way to share enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of other people during this crazy time we're living through.
It's very true. I find that in the current state of the world that we are in right now, having something fun and having something uplifting really is kind of a soup for the soul. And I think that the creators that we have on absolutely deliver.
They do. And I love learning about them in ways that will surprise even their most longtime fans.
I think they're going to see that when they hear their favorite creators talk about something that they themselves love, that they're going to read their work in a whole new way, and they're going to see the influence. And it's all going to make sense, and it's going to be a much richer experience for them.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil this particular reveal, but I was reading a graphic novel by an upcoming guest, got to a panel, took a picture of it, texted it to you, Chris, because I was like, look at this craziness. It is literally about the topic. And we just had, a unique viewpoint into that text because of our conversations.
Absolutely. It's something else. It really is special.
Also for everybody, this is the pilot episode, but as we go throughout season 1, you're absolutely going to want to check out the show notes because every show note is going to have some extra fun stuff. At the very least, it will have some recipes, but it might have a little bit of the insight about what happened in the making of the episode. So definitely follow the Superfan Substack.
Rodney Barnes is an award-winning writer, producer, and comic book creator whose vibrant, emphatic voice has established him as a Hollywood mainstay. Barnes was most recently an executive producer and writer for HBO's Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, chronicling the professional and personal lives of the 1980s Showtime Lakers. His publishing imprint, Zombie Love Studios, is dedicated to storytelling through unique BIPOC perspectives, including Killadelphia, nominated for an Eisner Award, Blackula, Return of the King, an adaptation of the cult horror classic, Monarch, an apocalyptic sci-fi adventure series following a group of Compton school kids in the midst of an alien invasion, and Florence and Normandy, a collaboration with artist, entertainer, Exhibit. Additionally, Barnes hosted the Winning Time podcast and is host and co-creator of the Run Fool podcast, a collaboration between Mr. Ballin, At Will Media, and Campside Media with 800,000 downloads a month and ranked 38th in true crime fiction podcasts. Today, Rodney is here to talk with us about his love of Stephen King. So let's get right into it. So, Rodney, I love this subject, first of all. I don't know anybody in the business that hasn't read On Writing.
Yes.
I don't know anybody in the business that isn't completely envious, either positively envious or just envious of his output.
Yes.
The nature of his, just the way he can just, has built his life around getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was the first Stephen King story that you recall reading?
I believe because it was so long ago and I read it in real time, like when it first came out, when they used to have these things called bookstores and paperback spinners. And I remember reaching up, and I can tell you how long ago it was because I'm 6'7". It was either Carrie or Salem's Lot. It was one of the other. Because that whole period between Carrie, Salem's Lot, and The Shining. I remember as a kid getting the books and being really excited because they used to have the reviewers' quotes in the beginning. And as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, this must be the greatest thing. I took it all literally. This must be the greatest book ever written because of all of these reviewers say fantastic, scary, spooky. And I remember that experience. So somewhere right in that night shift, those first 4 or 5 books, like right in there, is when I got the fever that's been with me for all of these years. So
but in the time since then, what do you think has differentiated him? What differentiates him from all the other horror readers you read? Because you must read a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge Richard Matheson fan right around that same time. Richard Matheson got me before Stephen King, and as much as I still love Richard Matheson, it's kind of like 1A, 1B. Stephen King had a way of making the stories feel more human, more relatable. The constructs within the stories felt more families, father, son, mother, daughter, those types of things that weren't so much like Bram Stoker. It wasn't Mary Shelley or whoever. Those things were kind of removed from me. And, I love the Hammer films. I love that type of gothic, that thing, but I couldn't really relate to it. I just loved it because I love Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. But then when I'm looking at this felt a lot more American. It felt more contemporary for its time. It just connected to me in a way that felt more real, which actually intensified the horror because it was closer to me, something I could relate to.
I love the image of you reaching up for the book.
Yes.
And
yes.
As you were telling that story, it made me realize I can probably remember and visualize like the actual copy of the Stephen King book that I read, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of which I got most of my Stephen King books from the library. I probably read 10 books before I bought one and had my first, paperback. Yep. Were you getting books from the library?
No. The only library, we had a public library I used to go to with my mother, but I was reading more young adult stuff then. It was weird. It was almost like, in a weird way, Stephen King was kind of taboo. I won't say it was almost porn, but it was one of those things for some reason I hid from my family, this thing, and they were paperback books. You could put them in your back pocket like you do your phone. And so it wasn't something that I actually went out to get in the way that I would comic books or any other thing. It had its own sort of, it's weird because this cult of Stephen King, the way that it grabbed me, I'm sure as the conversation will evolve, the personal part of it for me. Once it actually started getting me, like, it seemed like every 6 months or so there was a new Stephen King book. And I wouldn't just read them once, I'd read them again and again and again. And it started this like relationship, and to think that he's still making books 40, 50 years later, it never really stopped. Even when he had his accident, there was a fear that the books, I wanted him to be okay, but I wanted the books to continue as well. And so, it wasn't something, like I said, public library was something between me and him, seemingly. I'm the only one reading these books. I'm the reason he's so successful.
That's kind of like Misery.
Yes, Annie Wilkes. He would have never have gotten out if it was me instead of Annie Wilkes. I would never have let him go. He wouldn't have just been hobbled. I could have made up in my mind whatever the book ultimately became. She had to wait and see and read that last copy. I know what I wanted to be, and I'd have taken him out then.
There's something about, though, Stephen King's books that attract young adult readers, like yourself, like me, to where we know we're not supposed to read them because they're not for kids. And we do anyway. We sneak it. I did it too. I snuck Stephen King books, all the time. What is it about his books, do you think, that attracted such a young audience to want to read them in a forbidden way, do you think?
I think the visceral nature of the reality, the conversation itself, it felt almost like there was this period in the 70s when Norman Lear had his sitcoms, the All in the Family, Good Times, The Jeffersons, Maude, and he was speaking directly to the times. He was talking about Vietnam and women's rights and race and all of these things, and it felt provocative for its time. And I think Stephen King sort of, when you get into The Stand and some of the other things, they felt in a similar way with horror that he was speaking directly to the moment he was in. And it felt current. It felt real. And I think within that, within the realness, the newness, for lack of more sophisticated, eloquent words, there was something about that made it feel important.
I love the Norman Lear comparison. That is so true.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, nobody else was doing that thing in that way. It's almost like he moved the needle in the way horror was written, because horror was written primarily to scare, and it was still connected, I think, to the way horror was written in the 50s and the 60s. And, you know, evolving from that place and making it modern and speaking to the frailties of today's thinking. It's like, and if and building on that analogy, or that comparison, if you think about the sitcoms like Father Knows Best and Andy Griffith, where everything seemed perfect, and then you got to this place with Norman Lear where things weren't perfect. When you think about The Shining, where you have the Torrance family and they're coming apart, that's speaking of what a lot of people had been going through behind closed doors. You know, alcoholism, emotional abuse, divorce, you know, those types of things typically weren't the fodder for horror per se. Typically it was the inciting incident. Somebody died. There's a ghost in the house. You know, they were pretty much, how quickly can we get from A to B? Not so much deconstructing a family, deconstructing a marriage, deconstructing a relationship in some way that, you know, whether it's the family dog, you know, that you love, and the dog's going to eat the family. You know, he's supposed to protect the family. But whatever that construct, that human construct is, I'd never seen them broken down in that way before, seemingly, like I said, every 6 months or so in a new Stephen King book.
Do you have one of his books that scared you the most or in the most profound way?
I think the most traditionally scared, I think The Shining scared me. And I think it was the timing of The Shining and how much I got into the book and the relationship. There's another thing, too. I didn't just read Stephen King books. It felt like I made a relationship with them, like they were personal. It was a different experience than just reading a book. And I think Pet Sematary probably scared me in a way a movie would, because it was so in your face and visceral, and the concept was so one-to-one that, you know, you bury your pet here and your pet comes back and doesn't come back in the way that you left it. But I think The Shining scared me for a lot of reasons other than just genre and horror. It scared me because of the way the family came apart. And even though they loved each other, they weren't strong enough to deal with the demons within them, which made them vulnerable to the demons within the Overlook. And that idea I'd never really seen before. It was really more of the thing you have to be afraid of. It's outside of yourself. It's not the thing that's within you. And, you know, that idea, you know, and, you know, struggling with things within my own family as well, and things other friends were going through at the time, and being a relatively young person, it just felt all real.
Rodney, you teased this a little bit earlier, but you do have like a really deeply personal connection to Stephen King that goes back to your days when you first moved to Los Angeles. Why don't you bring us back to that time? You know, where were you in your life? How did you end up out here in LA? What was your?
Are you talking about the Green Mile story?
That's right.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you knew the Green Mile story. Well, but you're David Hyde. You know those types of things.
The Superfan Podcast knows.
Yeah, exactly. You're like the Woodward and Bernstein of, you know, pop culture. I think, where was I? When I got to LA around 94, 95, and I was a production assistant, and times were really tough, but idealistic. You know, I was living in and out of my truck. I'd just driven here from Maryland, trying to make the great American dream of becoming a writer one day. And I was working on a movie, Stigmata, with Gabriel Byrne. And we were at the farmer's market over on Fairfax. And I was reading the Hollywood Reporter. And there was an article about the Green Mile, that they were doing this nationwide casting call for the character of John Coffey in the movie The Green Mile. And They were looking for big black men, and boy, I'm one of those. So I'm thinking, even though I don't know how to act, I've never acted before in my life. I've been in movies like a scene here or a scene there to be exactly that thing, but never to really talk or to carry any narrative whatsoever. So I find out as the universe seems to drop me into these places that the transportation captain for the Green Mile is working on the film that I'm working on at the same time. So this man now has a stalker. He has a shadow. He has someone who is not going to leave him alone. And every day, could you introduce me to this person? What do I have to do? Who do I have to meet? And I don't know that transportation has nothing to do with any of the relatively creative process. You know, that's mostly production and making the thing happen, but not so much who picks what and does whatever. But I don't know any of that. All I know is you have something to do with the Green Mile. I want to be there. I really just want to meet Stephen King and see if he's real. I've seen this name. You know, it's kind of like Dick Wolf. You see this name all the time, but you don't know if it's a real person. It doesn't sound, it's Dick Wolf. It doesn't sound like a real person. It's like Paul Bunyan. And it's like the same thing with Stephen King. You know, okay, it's Stephen King, and you hear it and you see him in interviews, but maybe it's not a real person. So eventually he says, all right. I've got this paddy wagon. It's going to be a picture car in the movie. And I have to take it there to Warner Brothers. And it's going to be approved by Frank Darabont, who directed The Green Mile. Oh, my God, you got to take me. He said, I've got an idea. I'll put you in the back of the paddy wagon because I need a reason to take you here. I can't just take you here like an adopted child to come because you love Stephen King. I have to have a reason so I don't get fired. So he pitches this idea that I jump in the back of the paddy wagon. If I get in the back of the paddy wagon, then he can show sort of, you know, proximity between the paddy wagon and how a large black man would look in the back of said paddy wagon. Oh, my God, this is the greatest idea anybody's ever come up with. The hell with Oppenheimer, the hell with anybody that came up with great ideas. This is a great idea. So I get in the back of the paddy wagon. I would have gotten in the back of a modern-day paddy wagon, anything, as long as I would have gotten to this place. So I get in the back of the paddy wagon. The problem with a 1939 paddy wagon, I think it's 1939, is that there are no shock absorbers, there's no air conditioning. You know, truly, if you committed a crime back during that period of time, they wanted you to suffer to wherever it was you were going. So by the time I got to the lot, I looked like an inmate. I was sweaty. I was just nasty and funky. It was like 111 degrees. I think it was the hottest day on the face of the earth. And so I'm sweating and hot and sweating. So we get there, and I can see through the tiny bars, because I'm a prisoner now, I'm getting in character. I can see Frank Darabont, David Valdez, and I believe the UPM standing outside waiting to see this car. And I don't think I let the paddy wagon stop. I jumped out of the back, and I ran towards them. If you've ever seen three normal-sized people see a lumbering, giant, sweaty black man running towards them, the fear on their faces. It was actually, I think there was no scene in the actual Green Mile movie that was as terrifying as the look on those gentlemen's faces as I was barreling towards them at top speed. Probably 5 miles faster than whatever speed that I was capable of achieving at that time. And the transport captain probably looked in the mirror and saw me coming and cut me off. And he's like, oh, wait. And he's explaining to them while trying to stop me. And eventually, as things calmed down, as they do, I got the opportunity to talk to Frank Darabont. Told him how much I love Stephen King. Told him how much I loved him and The Shawshank Redemption and how much I appreciate this. And I'm talking really, really fast. And Frank was a production assistant at one time. And he's also a lover of all of the things that probably all of us on here love as well. Science fiction, you know, pop culture of a certain time. And we started talking, and he hired me right on the spot to be the stand-in for John Coffey in that very moment. So I saw Michael Clark Duncan, Shy McBride, and Bill Duke audition for the role of John Coffey in The Green Mile. And I was there every day. And I remember walking each of them from their car in the parking lot because I was kind of half PA, half stand-in. I still had that PA blood in me of being helpful. So I would walk you from wherever, and I would stand there, and I would watch them audition. And my God, Michael Clark Duncan cried more than any human being because that was the scene. He had to cry. He had to, John Coffey cried a lot. And boy, could he cry. And, in that moment, I felt like I was a part of something. It was like I'm this close. I'm 2 degrees away from Stephen King. But it got better. We got word probably about 3 weeks into shooting that Mr. King was going to be visiting the set. And he came. I had all of my books. And he was as gracious as he could possibly be. And he talked to me. I told him I wanted to be a writer one day. He was very, very kind. I have a big picture of me and him. It's in storage right now, but I think it's also on my Instagram page as well, of him hugging me. And he's a tall guy too. And, both of us kind of, how can I say it? We are endomorphic gentlemen, so when he's hugging me and I'm hugging him, at that point, I could have proposed. We could have been together. I could see a relationship. I know he loves Tabitha King, but I would have made a fine companion just to be able to be there with him. And he was so gracious, and he signed all of my books. And it was funny. The set photographer said every picture I have was Steve on set. Rodney's in the background somewhere. Like you see Rodney peeking. Rodney's somewhere peeking up. You see his shoulder. You see something. To the point where he said he had to trick me to go to other places just so he could get a picture of Mr. King with other people. And so that is my first brush with Mr. King. And it was truly it was really moving. I think I actually went out in the hallway because I used to stay out in the hallway and wait for them to call me to come in the set because it was on the Green Mile was very claustrophobic. It was very, very small. It was, death row. And I hated just being in there because I take up a lot of space anyway because I'm big. I still take up a lot of space. And so I went out in the hallway and I think I cried because he was really real. And if this person who was real, I might not be able to do what he did, but I could do something. All I had to do was push myself. And it was just from that meeting and the reality that the thing that I had been attached to and loved for so long was actually a real thing, inspired me. It pushed me. It made me want to work harder. And, went on for I think the movie went on another 3-4 months and, great experience. Late great Bernie Wrightson was there and like a whole lot of great, like horror pop culture folks were coming through every day and talking horror and I'm talking to them too. And it's just fantastic. It was a great experience.
The on-set photos of you are just chef's kiss. They're just so beautiful.
Yes.
All that, there's something about being young in the industry and getting that first shot and you're dreaming with your eyes wide open.
There's a behind the scenes shout out to my friend Constantine Nazar, who shot the behind the scenes movie making of film that went with the last DVD, I think the 25th anniversary or whatever. And he added a scene in there where I'm standing between Tom Hanks and Michael. And I'm standing there with my hands in my pockets wearing the John Coffey coveralls. And the look I have on my face, it is really like a giant child. Like I was so happy to be there every single day. I didn't care if 17 hours because, Frank loved long days. And I would be there. I didn't care. It was just one of those moments that sort of galvanizes in your mind why you go through this wackiness that is Hollywood day after day after year after year. There's something beautiful in it. And that experience was the thing that pushed me because up until that point, it had been pretty tough. Like, I wasn't making a whole lot of money. It's hard living in your car, especially when you're the size that I am. I was hustling from place to place, but in the time that I'm hustling, I'm not really writing. I'm not really developing, and I don't see a path from A to B. And that's when, morale, it gets dark. Like, why am I doing this? Is it just a fantasy? I'm from a different world and environment. I'm from a small town. I'm not from a place where dreams come true. At least these types of dreams, creative dreams. I thought everybody that's a writer in Hollywood must be a genius, and I know I'm certainly not a genius. So, coming to a place, imposter syndrome, insecurities, all of those things, when you encounter the thing that got you on, that helped get you on this path, and you realize he's real, he's humble. I have a pretty good intuitive sense about people, I think. And he was as genuine as they come. I don't know if that car accident changed him or anything. He might be a different guy. If any of you meet him or talk to him and he's a different guy, don't say, Rodney said you were so nice. He was great back then, and I'm sure he's still great now in anything I've heard him say or do. But it lived up to meeting your heroes, man. It was actually the thing that sort of added that nitrous, in those Fast and Furious movies where they push the button and the car goes 7,000 miles quicker. That's sort of what it was for me to just keep pushing and try to make this thing, be able to be in a place where I could work with people like David Hyde.
I love that you got to meet Bernie Wrightson, too. I never got to meet Bernie Wrightson.
Bernie gave me a Frankenstein portfolio, his last one, he said, and he signed it, and he was so gracious, and he was so kind, and he was there virtually, not every day, but I think at least weekly, he would come by and show Frank his art and, stuff for the movie and all of that, but it was great.
It's so interesting that you and Stephen King also have Small Town in common.
Yes.
What I really loved about On Writing was that it gave me a whole new understanding of write what you know. Mm-hmm. When you read about his childhood.
Yeah, I think there's a thing where it's another writer by the name of Stephen Pressfield, who has a great book called The War of Art. Mm-hmm. It's a similar type of, Stephen Pressfield's talking about resistance, and Stephen King is talking about your own inner demons and the things that get in the way of you actually doing the thing. And I think that was another thing, too. Some of the other writing programs and things that I'd read or done, the Save the Cats and all of those books that I used to get at the Samuel French bookstore when I first got out here.
Samuel French.
They talk about, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and, the rules of writing and principles and those things. Very rarely did they become personal. And you talk about work ethic and what it takes to be disciplined and just the philosophy of sitting in a chair by yourself for hours at a time, trying to wrestle with the demons within you to do this thing. And to your earlier point, when you're talking about Stephen King and how the 4 hours a day, every day, can't stop writing, pass it down to his kids, it's that part of it, developing your own inner, creative process that very rarely do any of us have, not deadlines, but when you're trying to make that bridge between not getting paid to be a writer and getting paid to be a writer, there's this thing where you have to be you have to be intrinsically motivated. You have to do the thing. And for a lot of us who are used to going to a place for 8 to 10 hours a day and punching in and punching out, the place provides the structure and the discipline for you to be there. It tells you when to go to lunch. It tells you when to do whatever. Finding that within yourself. And that's the world that I come from. I come from working people and people who work, but they work within clearly defined structures. And a creative career oftentimes takes you outside of that, where the development process you're in charge of. You're in charge of that thing that sort of drives you. And love won't always do it. Inspiration and motivation won't always do it. You have to really be disciplined enough that I'm sitting in a chair. I don't feel like doing this today. You might not get the best stuff out of me, but if I can get something down on the page, I've got something to change tomorrow. Took a while for me to get there, but understanding that there was a person out there like Stephen King helped a lot.
I heard that he used to say that he would write at least 10 pages a day. Is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I heard something like that. Mine was more of that it was as much time as it was page output. That it was 4 hours a day, every single day, and sometimes longer. But that was the thing that sort of landed in my head. And I have the same thing, too. I think mine is a little less structured in that I could work 10 hours a day, but tomorrow I'll work 2 hours. It's according to how my day sort of manifests, as we go on. But still, that idea of discipline, he was the first guy that made it personal. On Writing made it personal, that he's going through a process and a thing of being a writer that is similar to what I'm going through. The emotional stuff, the psychological stuff, just the game itself. We're not talking about talent or who's better, who's worse, but just the process of sitting in a chair and doing the job. That book was really helpful in sort of framing that.
I really appreciate his appreciation for his older brother in On Writing.
Yeah.
Every time I read Stephen King, I'm looking for that. Every time I read Stephen King, I'm looking for where you can feel it in there, whether it's Stand By Me or even Green Mile. There's this kind of camaraderie between the men that really reminds me of that.
Yes, and there's a vulnerability within that camaraderie where I think in other novels and other works prior to, well, it was almost like there was the John Wayne guy, there was the tough guy that was going to do a thing. And then it was kind of like in the movie Deliverance, we had Burt Reynolds, you had John Voight, you had Ned Beatty, like each one of them kind of represented a thing. I think Stephen King got it to a place where the guy you think is going to be that guy actually is another guy, and he's got a secret and he's got something underneath here. So you might walk into a story thinking you know who all of these people are. And I think Salem's Lot did a great job at that too, kind of watching a community work. And the people behave like normal people, in quotes, by day. But at night, they go through a transformation almost like the vampires do. You see them cheating on their wives, or you see them drunk, or you see them abusing their kids or doing certain things. And the things that happen behind closed doors is as thought-provoking and intriguing as the actual vampires themselves. And it's like The Walking Dead. You start to ask yourself, what's worse, the people or the vampires, in that case, zombies. But that was why I love Salem's Lot so much, too. It became so personal. I'm from a small town. Jerusalem's Lot was a small town as well. And it functioned like that, and it functioned in a way that sort of, it wasn't culturally specific. You could probably find a small town anywhere in the world, and they would have similar dynamics, interpersonal dynamics. And that's why I love the book so much. Just like Carrie with high school. There's probably in every high school anywhere on earth, there's a kid being bullied. There's a kid being bullied, going through a change in life. There's going to be good kids. There's going to be bad kids, and he was able to tap into all of that stuff.
And now it's time for a word from our sponsor, the one and only Mary Tyler Moore Action Figures.
Mary Tyler Moore Action Figures. Mary Tyler Moore Action Figures.
Mary Tyler Moore!
Eisner Award-nominated cartoonist Dave Baker's mind-bending graphic novel, Mary Tyler Moore is equal parts sweeping action-adventure graphic novel
and dystopian detective story
that weaves back and forth between worlds, touching on everything from corporate personhood to mutant shark men to the meaning of fandom
and reality itself.
It's a show you don't remember and a book you won't forget. Mary Tyler Moore retro action figures are available at the finest toy stores everywhere.
Mary Tyler Moore the action. Mary Tyler Moore the action figure.
I'm gonna get that!
Welcome back to the Superfan Podcast. Going back to the Green Mile, how did you feel about the way he released it? Which is...
Oh, the little novelists. I love the little novelists. They were frustrating because I wanted it all at one time, and I wasn't aware of that's how back in the day books used to come out and blah, 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 blah. The nostalgia and sentiment that was attached to it. I just wanted to read it. And I remember, I think the Green Mile was the first time I got an audiobook, because they used to come on cassette tape. And when I lived in my car, I could listen to the cassette tape and I would buy the novel too. So if I was on set and I couldn't be by my car to listen to it, I would read it. So it was like I would read one novel one way, then I'd listen to the second one. And I just built this relationship that actually helped a very lonely period and process. But I wish it all had come in one dose. Even that.
It's funny because I worked at a bookstore. I was working at Barnes and Noble at the time when all that came out. And it was so funny because what you just said encompassed how just about everyone felt that came in. I was like, when is the next one coming?
Yeah. And which is probably what he wanted and is brilliant as far as marketing is concerned.
Yeah.
But when you become when you become Annie Wilkes, you want to read it all now.
Yeah, it's very true. I know he struggled to make it cost effective.
Yes.
He said that he had wanted, something.
I think it was like $5.95 or something like that. It was some number which was huge, which was expensive, but for a little book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I was just curious because after that he did collect it. He collected it into one book. So
yes,
you have the patience to wait.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
David, is there one you're feeling?
Oh yeah. So King is very prolific. Have you read every novel that he's written?
Yes, with an asterisk. There's a period around Regulators and Dolores Claiborne and Needful Things and 4 Past Midnight, and right in that era where I read them quickly, but without the same level of detail that I read the earlier books. I think I picked back up with, what was the one with the, there was one with the black lady that died and her ghost came back. They made an A&E movie out of it. It was somewhere around Gerald's Game, Secret Window. Right around that period, I started to pick back up in the fanaticism again, and I'm back in it. I've been in it for a long time now, but Mr. Mercedes and Holly and the new one that's coming, and I have them all. I think 90% of them are signed. I have the big books that you buy that nobody is going to ever look at, like the huge, oversized ones that you get, Cemetery Dance makes. All first editions. I probably have about 200 Stephen King books somewhere, like across, like my collection is. I see people sometimes and they put their Stephen King collections. I'm like, that's cute. That's really cute. I'm not going to put mine up. That's one of the few things in life that I'm proud of, besides some of my kids, is my Stephen King collection of books. I love my Stephen King collection.
Are they all shelved together? Like, is it?
Oh yeah, in size. Like they're all like the size of the book, and when they were released, and blah blah blah. Yeah, it's like a serial killer's manifesto. How I've categorized all of these books: my first kill, my second kill, like all of them. I've got my first paperback book, got my first this, got my first that. Yeah.
And are there any comic book adaptations that you feel, as someone who loves Stephen King like you do, have gotten it to the point where you can appreciate it? Or
I bought them, but I have not looked at all of them the same. Like The Stand, they did. I forget the names of all of them, but I know The Stand primarily is the one. I think Peter David. I read the first one that Peter David did, and I bought the rest, and I still buy them. I bought the hardcover editions. And I have some of the floppies, but I don't revere them in the same way that I do, the original King. I have his comic book that he wrote that Bill Sienkiewicz did a cover to. I'm that guy. I have I go through periods sometimes where I go a little nuts and, Stephen, this was the pen that Stephen, I got to have it. I said, how much? Sure, go ahead. I won't pay the mortgage this month. I'm going to buy this.
Adaptation is hard. Adaptation is hard. It's hard to visualize Stephen King because so much of what makes him great is happening inside you.
Well, and so much is personal to him. So it's difficult, I think, to interpret the way he would interpret something because, none of us know. We have our own voice, so I can do it in my voice, but that's not as good as doing. It's best that I do my world in my way and he does his world in his way. Although if someone said, "Hey, Rodney, you want to do a run on the stand?" I'd say yes before.
I was going to ask you.
The D landed, I would do it.
Yeah, that was my next question for sure.
Yeah. David would be very upset with me if I didn't, and I never want to upset David Hyde. That's a note to you guys to never upset David Hyde. There's a price to be paid. Won't say what it is, but you don't want to pay it. None of us. It's like Tony Soprano. It's a thing. You just do not want to go down that road.
I'm just going to pull this audio and have that be my cell phone answering message now. Go.
Yeah, as well you should. Because it's true. Because it's absolutely true.
So how often do you go back and reread one of your favorite novels?
I listen to Salem's Lot every 6 months. I listen to The Stand once a year. I don't read them physically lay across my bed like I was when I was a kid. But I listen to them on audiobook. A lot of times I listen. It's funny because Audible will tell you what you've read, and it's like I'm reading the same things over and over again. One of them that I struggle through, since I'm being honest here, because it's David, and talking to David is like sodium pentothal. The Dark Tower. I have not fallen in love with The Dark Tower the way some people have. I've read it, and that's one of those things when I say around regulators, and there was another one that came with it where he told the same story but different ways. Right in there in the middle of, like the first two Dark Towers, but then once he got deeper into it, Father Callahan shows up and a couple of other things. I didn't have the same level of love and affection that I did for those early books. I look at Stephen King, like I said, like my kids. I fell in love with him, so whatever he does, I will ride with him. Whether I agree with it or not, I will go with it because I love you, and it's not a roller coaster ride, because even the stuff that I don't necessarily spark to is still exceptional. It's still exceptionally written. It's still detailed. It's all of that. It's just sometimes the slow burn gets really slow. Billy Summers had a little bit of that for me. But nonetheless, I still look at the awe that I feel because of the genre bending. When you can go from the books of different seasons to fantasy to horror to mystery to true crime to, it's so many different types of stories. And the thing I loved about Richard Matheson as well, that they didn't just do one thing. They did a lot of different things. And to me, that is the highest compliment that I can give a writer. Like, it's not bad if you only do one or two things, but my thing is to be so nimble and, you can jump from story to story and still feel something regardless. I want to do that when I grow up.
David, you going to ask that Boston Red Sox question?
You know it, sir.
So, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. That was the one that was another. I actually liked that little book, but he talked about being a Red Sox fan a lot in that book. And I have that book too, the one that he wrote about the Red Sox, yes.
Mm-hmm. I like that. No, so what I was thinking about, I grew up in Massachusetts, and so I felt like the deep Northeast connection that are in these books, but also I am a Red Sox fan. Stephen King is notoriously a Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
He's, especially when they were going up against the Yankees, and they'd be on national TV, and you would see Stephen King
reading a book as he's sitting there.
A book at Fenway Park. And there is not a more appropriate team for him to be a super fan of than the Red Sox, because they were first, right?
Yep.
It says a lot about Stephen King to be a Red Sox fan. What does it say about you to be a Stephen King fan? Like, do you feel like it is a hack for people to know into your personality? Oh, okay.
No, I think that, it's organic. I didn't just jump on a bandwagon.
Okay.
I fell in love with him before Richard Bachman. It's like I fell in love with him at the most innocent and purest of times in my life, where I didn't know what it meant to like somebody because everybody else did. I just genuinely did. And it was from the heart. I mean, it was genuinely the thing that I loved about reading. It's weird, and I can't speak for everyone who went through a similar experience, but being an only child, being a lonely child, and spending a lot of time by myself, had I not had genre, whether it was movies, TV shows, books, comic books, and those things, I don't know what my life would have been. So I am eternally grateful to Stephen King and all the other folks that fall under that idea of Stephen King, who were sort of like my friends. Like, to be able to be in a room on a Sunday with a big thing of lemonade, sitting there reading a book slowly, lost in the book, was one of the most romantic times in my life. And it kept me focused on something. It expanded my horizons because I'm reading these books as like a kid, early teen, 10, 9 years old, whatever. And a lot of other stuff I could have gotten into. But that was there for me to be able to consume and to broaden my horizons. And I'm eternally grateful. So, no, I don't think, maybe today after 54 books or whatever it is and hundreds of millions, billions sold like McDonald's. If you were to jump on right now and you were a person that could have done it 30 years ago, perhaps you could be that. But I would be happy that you're reading a book, period, because people don't read books the way that they used to. But no, I was a complete innocent, had no idea who Stephen King was, and that one day we would be talking about him 40 years later.
Well, okay. I think we have one last question before we have a couple little surprises for you.
Uh-oh, I need a surprise. Now, I took my blood pressure medicine today, so I can deal with one or two surprises.
Nice. I love it. Okay, so the first question is just a yes or no question. Okay. And it is, do you know who Dana Morissette is?
Dana Morissette. Name sounds familiar.
Okay. That's all we need for that.
You said Dana?
Dana Morissette, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Name sounds familiar. Doesn't jump out. Now, you have to understand. I don't remember things after, it's kind of like Instagram stories. After a certain period of time, you can't really quiz me. And it's damn near 8 o'clock, which is really perilously close to my bedtime, unless it's Friday when Dateline comes on. Then I stay up until 10.
He's a man of mystery. There's more people that don't know him than do.
So what we do for every single one of these is David and I, we come up with a cocktail and a dessert pairing for the fandom of our guest. So I'm going to hand it over to David so he can tell us what his cocktail is.
Yeah, so this was a fun cocktail called The Circus That Blew Away. And this is a very, very simple cocktail because it is bourbon with salted caramel bitters.
Okay.
There you have it.
There you have it? Okay. And the dessert that we've paired with it is called John Coffey's Magic Chocolate Pecan Pie. So it is a dessert that draws from the southern setting, which is pecans, chocolate, and pie, while incorporating a magic swirl to symbolize the supernatural themes of the movie. And the golden pecans on top honor John Coffey's warmth and luminous nature. So,
guess they like that all over the world.
Yes.
But go ahead.
So we're going to post how exactly to make these two things on our Substack, the Superfan Podcast Substack. And I believe now we have something from Christian Gossip.
Oh, that's right. All of our guests, we just do here, I'll show you what we're doing. It's just part of the fun of the show.
Now, I was hoping to get an autographed picture of David Hyde. So I didn't know when you said surprise. I'm sitting here. I got this frame. I'm like, when is this coming? But it doesn't sound like that's what I'm going to get.
Just artwork. All our guests get the same treatment. And here comes you. Can you see that?
I cannot see. Oh, now I see. Yes. Now I see. That's me.
Yeah.
That's you.
Even with the gray little stuff, Reed Richards, the little gray there. I look happy. I look really. Who did that?
That's me.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
We'll send it to you.
Thank you. It's not as good as a David Hyde 8x10, but I can always make my own David Hyde and take him to dinner, and he'll sign it for me, I'm sure, if I beg.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rodney.
Before we let you go, one last question. Is there something that you wish that people knew about Stephen King that you feel like they don't know?
The only thing is, when it comes to people that are iconic like Stephen King, I don't think people realize that there's a real person behind the person. They just see the stuff and the fame and the celebrity. And I can honestly say, having been around a lot of famous people, he was probably one of the most genuine that I'd come to know. So, truly, I think a lot of times those of us in fandom, get to a place where we follow someone, and we hope that they're as good as the work that they do. I got the sense in my short time with Stephen King that was absolutely the case. And I hope people, who haven't met him can take that in the spirit of the books that they read, and that this guy loves this stuff and is as lovable as the thing that he creates that we all love.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome.
The Superfan Podcast is a production of Superfan Media. This episode was edited by Bryant Dillon with production help by Fanbase Press, who is a title sponsor of Season 1. The Superfan Podcast logo is designed by Chriswell Lappin, whose design work can be seen at chriswelllappin.com. The theme song was written by friend of the podcast Dan Schulman and performed by Low in the Shag.
And now, a word about our sponsors. Fanbase Press is the title sponsor of Season 1 of the Superfan Podcast. Media award-winning, an Eisner and Harvey Awards-nominated comic book publisher, and geek culture website, Fanbase Press produces new and distinctive works, as well as daily reviews, interviews, and podcasts that span the pop culture spectrum and give voice to the themes, ideals, and people that make geekdom so exceptional.